Jared here from the Heel to the Face podcast. And it's hard to believe, but in 2020, when SoFi Stadium was originally announced to host a WrestleMania, SoFi Stadium was still under construction, and WrestleMania was still a one-night event. But here we go, fast forward to 2023, and SoFi Stadium finally hosting WrestleMania. It will be the fourth time WrestleMania has been a two-night event. And while two-night WrestleMania may be successful for WWE when it comes to their revenues, I'm going to give you some reasons today why a two-night WrestleMania is not the best idea for the fans. Now let's start by talking how we got to two-night WrestleMania. And a lot of people are going to mention WrestleMania 35, the 7-hour-long WrestleMania from MetLife Stadium. And that may have been the fans' idea of how we started two-night WrestleMania, but that's not how we got here. WrestleMania 2020 was scheduled to be a one-night event before the 2020 COVID pandemic hit. And with the WWE Hall of Fame and NXT TakeOver being scrapped from the WWE Network lineup in order to give you, the WWE Network subscriber, the most bang for your buck and make sure that there was still programming for you to watch that weekend, despite the cancellation of the other WWE events, WrestleMania was spread out over 2 days. WrestleMania was pre-taped, so it really could have been pre-taped and put together for one night. But like I said, to give you the most bang for your buck on the network because of cancellations of TakeOver and Hall of Fame, WWE put on WrestleMania for 2 nights so you could have all the wrestling all weekend long. Now in 2021, we returned to normal, sort of. WWE WrestleMania was back in front of fans, but only 25,000 were allowed at Raymond James Stadium. So in order, again, to get the most bang for their buck, this time for attendance, they made WrestleMania 2 nights. So they could have 25,000 on Saturday, 25,000 on Sunday, and that gave you, the fans, the best opportunity to attend WrestleMania with the limited capacity, now with WrestleMania being spread out over 2 nights. The success of this idea has then continued on, and here we are in 2023 with WrestleMania being 2 nights. But here's some of the reasons why WrestleMania being 2 nights is not the best idea for the fans. Let's start with the specialness of the event. The reason why the NFL Super Bowl is the Super Bowl is it's because all eyes are on one event on one night. It's the Super Bowl. The reason why the World Series isn't what it used to be back in the 1950s and 60s in American culture is because Americans don't want to watch a 7-game series or at least make an event out of it. The Super Bowl is one night. Easy to make an event, easy to bring all your friends and family over. Like I said, all the eyeballs of the world are on the Super Bowl for one night. And in wrestling, WrestleMania used to be the same. But now, with WrestleMania being 2 nights, there's a chance that some of the talent who performed on one night of WrestleMania may not even be at the other day's event. We see that now with Raw and SmackDown. On a Saturday night, there's Raw superstars and SmackDown superstars on opposite ends of the country running different house shows. Seth Rollins is wrestling Austin Theory while having no idea what Drew McIntyre is doing on the other side of the United States. The same can be said here. John Cena and Austin Theory are going to kick off WrestleMania 39 on Saturday night, and who's to say that either of them even show up to SoFi Stadium on Sunday? So when Roman Reigns or Cody Rhodes comes back into gorilla position as the champion, neither one of those guys may even still be in Los Angeles. Yes, Monday Night Raw is in LA, so probably they're not going to go too far. But the point is, they may not be there, and any of the superstars who were performing on Sunday may not be at WrestleMania on Saturday. So for having all eyeballs and everybody under one roof, the wrestling creme de la creme all in one place at one time, well, with WrestleMania being 2 nights, that may not necessarily be the case. Another reason 2-night WrestleMania is not the best for the fans is its ticket prices. And I'll commend WWE. They've kept the 2-night WrestleMania ticket prices down a little bit. They could have made it just essentially 2 WrestleMania tickets. They could have made what I used to pay, around $250 to attend WrestleMania, times 2. They've now kind of played some sort of middle ground that a 2-night combo ticket is pretty comparable to a 1-night WrestleMania ticket from the past. But either way, the prices are going to be higher in the end because you're essentially trying to sell 2 tickets. So if you were to buy 2 individual tickets for WrestleMania, the joint sum of those is probably going to be higher than 1 night of WrestleMania in the past. Last year at AT&T Stadium, I saw AT&T Stadium charging $100 to park your vehicle for a night of WrestleMania, which I imagine is the exorbitant price they also charge for Dallas Cowboys games. I imagine if WrestleMania was one night, as $100, as expensive as it is, would have been still the price. The difference is the fans who parked at AT&T Stadium would have just had to pay that once. Now, there were some other cheaper parking lots, obviously, ones that charge $20, ones that charge $50. But again, those would have been $20 and $50 for one night. When I went to Raymond James Stadium, I found a pretty cheap parking space for only $10. I did, though, have to spend that $10 twice when I would have just had to spend the $10 once. Now, inside the stadium, obviously, I'm going to have to buy food and beverage and other concessions more than once. I'll have to do it on Saturday, and I'll have to do it on Sunday. And those watching at home, I imagine you're going to get together with your buddies. You're going to buy pizza and wings and beer, and you're going to now have to do that twice. So tickets and all the overall prices for things are going to go up because you're having two events, not one. One other major thing is the wrestling amount. Obviously, WrestleMania 35 to fans is the reason why we have two-night WrestleMania. Who wants to watch 7 hours of wrestling? Who wants to sit in one place at one time for 7 hours and watch wrestling? Well, unfortunately, we still have the same amount of content. With NXT this upcoming year being at 9:45 a.m. local time, when it used to be on Saturday nights the night before WrestleMania, if you were to attend or watch NXT and then watch night one of WrestleMania together on Saturday, you are going to watch about 7 hours of wrestling. And that doesn't even count that then you're going to watch WrestleMania night 2. So the fact that you think you're going to get out of watching an absorbent amount of wrestling WrestleMania weekend is just not the case. I always watched a ton of wrestling WrestleMania weekend because either way, whether it's just WrestleMania being one night or WrestleMania being 2 nights, I was watching wrestling probably every night that week. Thursday with the Hall of Fame, then Ring of Honor, then AEW, then Impact, then NXT. So either way, you're going to be watching a ton of wrestling. And in some cases, you might find yourself watching 7 hours of wrestling in one day if NXT happens right before WWE WrestleMania, because where else are they going to fit it on the schedule? Before, I would watch NXT on Saturday, then WrestleMania on Sunday, but now you got to put it all in on one day. Now, Ring of Honor, which used to have a show, Supercard of Honor, on Saturday, has to have it on Friday. So you've got to decide if you're going to watch SmackDown or Ring of Honor. So the content and the amount of wrestling is still there. And that brings me to my next point, diversifying your wrestling. I go to WrestleMania every single year, and I typically go Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and occasionally stay for Monday. And every one of those days, I'm watching wrestling. Sometimes it's WWE, sometimes it's not. But with WrestleMania now taking up the bulk of both Saturday and Sunday, it gives me less options to do things other than WrestleMania. Now, on Friday, I have to decide if I want to go to the Hall of Fame or if I want to go to Ring of Honor. Now, Thursday, I have to decide if I want to go to Impact and if I don't want to go to wrestling on Saturday morning. NXT on Saturday morning is up in the air for me right now because how much wrestling can I go to? And oh, by the way, I'm in Los Angeles on vacation. I would like to explore the place. The reason why these cities bid to get WrestleMania is not just for you to come and watch wrestling, but to explore their cities and spend money in their cities. Last year when I was in Dallas, I wanted to go to the Fort Worth Stockyards or go to the JFK museums. In Los Angeles, there's so much to do, from the Sunset Boulevard to Hollywood to the beaches. You want to see what Los Angeles has to offer, but unfortunately, with WrestleMania, just the WrestleMania event itself, taking up all your Saturday and all your Sunday, it leaves you very limited amounts of time to do other things. So what used to be a vacation where wrestling might be sprinkled in there is now a wrestling heavy trip where essentially you get off the plane and you're going to go right to SoFi Stadium for WrestleMania. And it's going to take up the bulk of your time where you won't be able to explore what those cities have to offer. Another thing I'd like to mention is WrestleMania no longer being the showcase of the Immortals. Now, frankly, WrestleMania has never been that, the showcase of the Immortals. WrestleMania has never been this event that people like to think it is, and that's the best of the best in the world of wrestling on one night. WrestleMania has always been a long show where WWE tries to squeeze in everyone and anyone who works for WWE. The Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal is a pure example of making sure that everyone who is employed by WWE can find a way on the WrestleMania card. WrestleMania, while the main event might be exclusive company, you have the Undertakers, the Rocks, the Stone Colds, the Hulk Hogans, the Ultimate Warriors. The list goes on of a slim few amount of people who've held championships and been in WrestleMania main events. being on the WrestleMania card isn't necessarily mean that you are at the top of your craft at that time. We've seen Fandango on the WrestleMania cards. We've seen the Blue Brothers on the WrestleMania cards. We've seen the Body Donnas, the Red Rooster. The list goes on of the people we've seen on WrestleMania cards that wouldn't necessarily be considered WWE's best they have to offer at that time. And while now that WrestleMania is essentially a 2-night show, that idea of ever even going back to being the best of the best is out the window. WWE now advertises WrestleMania being 2 nights. They sell tickets for WrestleMania being 2 nights. They then tell people who are buying tickets and SoFi Stadium themselves, or whatever stadium they're going to, that WrestleMania is going to be a 2-night extravaganza. So no matter who is healthy or who can compete that night, WWE has 2 nights of wrestling to fill. And we see that this year. Bray Wyatt, Randy Orton, and Matt Riddle are currently not on the active roster for WWE, with Bray Wyatt most recently going down with injury and canceling his match with Bobby Lashley. Now, with a WrestleMania card like we have this year, that would not be a big deal. WrestleMania, instead of being 7 hours, will shrink it down to 6. But no, WWE can no longer do that. The WrestleMania card at MetLife Stadium that was elongated and had a ton of matches, if one of those matches had to be cut for time, no big deal. We just keep going on with the show, making it a little bit shorter. But now, with essentially at least 3 hours of wrestling to fill on Saturday and 3 hours of wrestling to fill on Sunday, they've got to fill that time. So what we've seen as of late is WWE coming out with these 2 tag team showcase matches, both for the men and the women, that you can tell were created out of necessity. Like I said, Bobby Lashley and Bray Wyatt not happening on the WrestleMania card, that would have been okay. We'd get rid of a match, and WrestleMania, instead of being 7 hours, would be 6.5 hours. But now, with every single minute of WrestleMania needing something to fill in, because essentially they've got 6 to 8 hours of time they have to fill, they are going to find a way to fill it. So if for some reason Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes gets canceled at the last minute, or John Cena can't compete against Austin Theory, or Edge and Finn Balor doesn't happen at WrestleMania, they will have to fill that spot, because they are not going to have a 2-hour night of WrestleMania. A 4-hour WrestleMania in total would have been great. A 5-hour WrestleMania in total would have probably also been great. But 2 2-hour shows, that's not going to happen. You didn't pay $1,000 to sit ringside at WrestleMania for Saturday night or Sunday night to see only 2 hours of content, and WWE knows that. So they are going to make sure that everyone and anyone in WWE that is currently hired is on that card every single year. And everyone who gets hurt or every match that has to get scrapped just means another jobber or another low carder gets moved up the line and gets a higher payday for their spot at WrestleMania. Another reason why 2-night WrestleMania isn't great for the fans is that nobody says that WrestleMania won't be too long. And what I mean by that is obviously WrestleMania as one event is now the longest it could possibly be. It is about 8 hours of time, with last year's WrestleManias being 4 hours each night. So the 7-hour WrestleMania at MetLife Stadium, too long, but 8 hours spread over 2 nights, not so bad. But what's saying that WWE has to make this only 8 hours? What's saying that WWE can't make each night 7 hours? Nothing. Now, we just discussed that WWE is going to have a hard time finding wrestlers to fill these spots, so making 2 7-hour WrestleMania cards is probably going to be pretty tough. But if for some reason WWE could find a way to do it, what is stopping them? The first night of a 2-night WrestleMania back in 2020, each night was about 2 hours and 45 minutes. Then in 2021, that moved up to about 3 hours. Then we saw it about 4 hours last year each night. Who knows how many minutes each night of WrestleMania is going to be this year, but if each night of WrestleMania was 5 hours, what would stop them from doing that? If each night of WrestleMania was 6 hours, what would stop them from doing that? We know that we can't go back. We know we can't go back to 4-hour WrestleMania. We know we can't go back to 3-hour WrestleMania under the 2-night format, but we can always get bigger and bigger. What is stopping WrestleMania from being a 7-hour event times 2? Well, just, I guess, the roster. And if WWE has a bigger roster, there's nothing stopping them from making each night of WrestleMania excrucially long. One final point of 2-night WrestleMania not being great for the fans is the idea that WrestleMania is 2 separate events this way. It is not. It is one event. WrestleMania is one elongated event spread out over 2 nights. Now, we know music festivals, they go on for 3 days, and some people go to 1 day, some people go to 2 days, some people go to all 3 days, but there is no expectation that you have to go to all of it. But with WWE, there is. Because bands aren't like wrestlers. People who watch Raw also watch SmackDown. People who watch SmackDown also watch Raw. Everything under the WWE banner and everything under WrestleMania is considered one brand. This isn't like seeing Green Day and seeing Coldplay. Those are two separate bands, and you can pick which day of the festival you want depending on which band you want to go see. But with WrestleMania, they don't even tell you what you're going to see. When you buy tickets for a music festival, or most recently, if you bought tickets to go to a regional tournament of the NCAA, you knew which teams were going to which regions. You knew which bands at the festivals were playing which days right when you purchased tickets. But for WrestleMania, we're less than a week away, and we still don't know which matches are on which night. So if you bought tickets for WrestleMania last August, you had no idea who was going to wrestle on which night. If you have tickets for Saturday night of WrestleMania this year, other than right now knowing Austin Theory and John Cena are going to compete, you have no idea what you're going to see. So how could you essentially make your decision on which night of WrestleMania you're going to attend when you don't even know what you're going to see? It's like buying a ticket to a WWE televised event when they're not telling you you're going to see Raw or you're going to see SmackDown, or maybe you're going to see neither. So when you buy a ticket for WrestleMania, they assume you're buying tickets for both. Because like myself, how could I in good faith buy a ticket for WrestleMania night 1 or night 2 and not really know what I'm going to see? But one thing I do know is I do know what I'm going to see in one aspect, and that's what proves this point, and that is the main event. WWE, to continue their knowledge of knowing that WrestleMania is one elongated event, having not told you which matches are on which night yet because they know you're going to watch the whole thing, they also always bring you what they think is the main event on Sunday night as the final match. Now, if each night of WrestleMania were considered equal and had carried equal weight, what would stop Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar, the greatest WrestleMania match of all time, having been on Saturday? Or if each night was of equal weight, what would stop Roman Reigns and Edge and Daniel Bryan from being on Saturday in 2021? And what's going to stop Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns from main eventing night 1 of this year's WrestleMania again if each night is equal weight? Nothing. But the fact that they know that each night is not of equal weight. If The Rock and Roman Reigns ever happens and ever main events of WrestleMania, you can all but assured it's going to be on Sunday night. Because WWE is aware that this is one long event. This is WrestleMania split in 2. And the true main event of this event is Sunday night. The last match on the card, the one in which is the final match before WrestleMania rides off in the sunset with no additional nights. So if WWE really thought that this was 2 WrestleManias split in half, then why would they always make sure to put the Roman Reigns World Championship matches on as that main event? Or even in 2020, why was the Brock Lesnar Drew McIntyre match, the one that was going to main event WrestleMania, why was that on Sunday night as the final match? WrestleMania knows that this is one long event. So if you attend Sunday, you can all but assured that you are not going to see the World Championship on the line. You can all be assured that you are not seeing the main event that WWE thinks is truly the WrestleMania main event. So what do you think of those reasons? Do you have any reasons why you like 2-night WrestleMania still being a thing, or why you think it should go back to 1 night? Leave the comments below. This is Jared for the Heel to the Face podcast.